Hi and welcome to another painting video. Today I'll be sharing with you my oil painting process, the kind of materials, tools, color mixing and techniques I use. The first step in my painting process is preparing the canvas, for which I have used 2 to 3 layers of primer on my canvas. Then I use sandpaper on my canvas to get rid of any bumps or unnecessary texture on surface. Any residue that is left on my canvas, I use brush to wipe it away. I repeat the process 2 to 3 times until I feel that the surface of canvas is smooth to work on. For me, I have found that my oil paints absorb very quickly into canvas, so for that I use a layer of acrylic paint before oil painting. The consistency of acrylic paint for me shouldn't be too thick or liquidy. I spray the canvas with water before applying acrylic paint so that it is evenly applied on each area. Once the canvas is dried completely, I put it on my easel. I did a little thumbnail sketch of the idea I had in my mind, and I'll be using it as my guideline. The next step after preparing the canvas is underpainting. The brand of oil paints I use are by Maris. I use burnt umber and Persian blue for underpainting. These two colors are dark enough for me that they would show through initial layers of paint. For solvent, I use equal parts of linseed oil and turpentine oil. Working separately with these two solvents is difficult for me because linseed oil is very dense and turpentine smells really bad to the point that it gives me headaches. So I found that mixing them both together works best for me. In the beginning of underpainting, I use a very diluted burnt umber to create guidelines for me. I roughly paint the shape of the head. Create a divide in the middle for placement of eyes. Again create a divide for nose, and again create a divide for placement of lips. I use this guideline every time I draw or paint a face. I create rough shape for leaves. I was a little carefree about leaves because if I messed up, it didn't matter much. But for facial features, I had to stay very careful since those mistakes will also appear later in painting. So I had to work very carefully on her face that everything was symmetrical and that it didn't had any proportional mistakes. I used much more opaque paint to lay out the details of the face. Off camera, I worked a lot on her face. As I was near finalizing the underpainting, I would mix some Persian blue with burnt umber and use that. Whenever I felt that I made a mistake, I would use a clean brush with a little bit of solvent and clean up my lines. I forgot to paint tears. Now I just need to finalize leaves with darker paint. You can see here I became really impatient and used a lot of blue and a large brush, but it's alright because it will be covered by paint. If I'm doing an underpainting in oils, I would let it dry for a day and start painting the next day, but if the underpainting is in acrylics, I would start painting right away. For the colors that I use for my palette, they vary a lot and I have selected them according to my preference, but you can choose any color of your choice. The most used color in my palette is Zinc Titanium White. I put a large blob of paint on my palette because I know I'll be using it a lot and mixing it with other colors. Yellow pale for yellow, although I would prefer using yellow ochre, but this works fine as well. Besides white, yellow is the most used color in my palette. Rose for adding blush to cheek, lips and eyes. Light red, also use it for same purpose as rose and sometimes to neutralize some colors. Persian blue, a very rich and dark color but also a very transparent color. Burnt umber used very frequently in my paintings, although you wouldn't see it that much, but it's mixed with a lot of colors. Mauve, very pigmented and rich color, and just like Persian blue, it's very transparent. Scarlet, I didn't think I would use it that much in the painting, but I used it a lot while mixing colors. Now I need a color for background, for which I decided this pastel greenish color that is equally green but equally blue. So for that I took a lot of white, some yellow and a little bit of Persian blue. I created this little thumbnail painting to figure out colors and I liked how it looked. So now I'm just covering the background with the color I made earlier. As you can see, if there is a light layer of paint, you can still see the underpainting. But if the paint is applied too densely, the underpainting disappears. So my advice is to keep initial layers light and somewhat transparent. For skin tones, I divide color into light colors, mid-tones and dark colors. I keep blush color and special colors separate from skin tones. And when I'm painting the skin, I mix those blush colors or special colors such as blue, green or purple into skin tones. This method has simplified painting and mixing colors for skin a lot. Also, I think with painting skin, a lot of intuitive work goes into it, and it also depends upon the atmosphere of painting. If a painting is predominant in one color, I would add that color in skin tone as well. I'm done with skin tones, and special colors for this painting are green, purple and blush color. Initially in painting face, I just tint the face with various colors. I use blush color for nose, cheeks, eyes and lips. Once I'm done with this, I move on to shadows under the eyes, nose, lips and around the forehead. After painting the shadows, I go over that with the green I mixed earlier and define the shadows more. Then I place the mid-tones around the face. I like to go from dark to light in all painting. It's much easier than going from light to dark. Then I place the light color that I mixed earlier. I add a bit of purple in some shadow areas. Then taking a clean brush, I blend the colors together, and in between each color I would clean my brush on a tissue, or else this would all turn into a muddy color with no structure and it would be a mess to handle. I use green to define shadows again and use the same brush to blend the colors. The eyes were lacking some color, so I defined the shadows with some darker and saturated color and blend it with everything else. For light color, I just use the light skin tone color and then add a highlight in the middle. While blending everything together, I lost a lot of color and structure in face, so here I'm trying to introduce those colors back again. I again apply the blush color on cheeks, nose, and blend it with the mid-tone I used on her face. I used the same mid-tone on green color and blend it with everything. Now I add a light color around the eyes. Also use it on the edges of lip to soften the appearance and to add a bit of darker color. Again I move towards eyes and add a darker color with some purple tint. I also use the darker color to define the shape and shadows of nose. I blend the color where I need a softer look and leave strong edges where I want to define the features. I add some light colors on the side of the nose, in the middle of the nose, as well as around nostrils to define the feature. And use a reddish purple color for shadows. I define the middle of the nose with strong highlights. I use the same highlight to define the area around the eyes. I use strong highlight color to define Cupid's bow and corner of the lips. And whenever I feel I messed up, I just move the paint around with my fingers or brush and it's good to go. Again, going for a highlight around the eyes. Whenever I place the highlight, I feel like everything just comes together and looks good. And I must admit that highlight is my favorite part in painting face. I add highlight in the middle of the chin and forehead. For lips, I place a lighter pink first and then add a strong highlight. I use the same reddish purple color to add shadows. I made the green shadow very light with the help of light color from skin tones to define one side of the face. And on the other side, I again used the green color to define shadows. Now since there was enough paint on the canvas, the color blended well with all paints. I have to remain careful not to add too much paint or else it becomes difficult to work with. I introduce some different color, then a blush tone on lips and work over it again by defining lights and darks. I add some light green where the shadows are. I defined the corner of the lip with the darker color. Up till now, I had spent a lot of time painting her face and the natural light was just slipping away. For this day, I had the goal that I would complete the face, so I am painting an artificial light. I defined her brows and I could still see the underpainting of tears, so I followed it and created this falling shadow of tears. And added some highlights and a dark color to give appearance of tear. For her eyes and lashes, I used the darkest color I had on palette, which was a mixture of burnt umber and Persian blue. I mixed yellow pale and Persian blue and a bit of brown to create this color. I take some of the green, mix some yellow, blue and white to create a lighter color. Take the same green and add more yellow and a bit of blue. Then I take the beige color and mix mauve in it and I added a bit of scarlet color in it as well. I take some of the previously mixed purple and add Persian blue and scarlet to create a darker purple. I again take the previously mixed purple and add Persian blue and yellow in it. mix the brownish color and add yellow in previously mixed green to give it a warm tone. For her hair, I initially had the idea that they would have varying color of purple, greens, and they would have a very interesting shape, color and texture to them. But as I moved forward, I didn't know that what was wrong was my selection of colors, or the way things were too stiff, or that I didn't had much space to work with. Whatever it was, I wasn't satisfied with my work on hair, but I still completed it and left it. If I wanted to change it, I could change it later, or else it would just grow on me and somehow I would like it. Then I started working on leaves. I just used the greens I mixed earlier. My goal with leaves were initially to just cover the area with varying hues of green and purple. At some places I would put a dark green, and at some very light and bluish green with purple, and at some places very warm and sunny green color. I honestly really admire the artists that work very loosely, and you can see each and every brush mark they make on their canvas. And on the other hand, I don't stop working and overworking. I like to improve on this in future and allow myself to be less constrained by my own limitations. At first I was working with a bigger flat brush for covering the leaves, and then I switched to a smaller flat brush for details. I found that it was a little bit difficult working with smaller flat brush for details. Maybe the brush was too stiff, or I used too much solvent previously to cover the leaves, but whatever it was difficult to work with. But later I switched to round brush and it just worked wonders. And my painting process was very simple and easier with a round brush. I would directly apply yellow for making the colors appear warm at some areas. You shouldn't mix colors directly on canvas, but it worked fine for leaves. I really enjoy the kind of colors I use for the leaves. It's predominantly green, but I would use purple or rose at some places. And I would place this bluish highlights on leaves, and it came together well. And this increased my interest in painting more greens and foliage in my future paintings. I painted the stem of Lily of the Valley with dark green color. I had the option to paint them before or after the background. I went with painting them first and then later cleaning up any mess with background color. It did require some extra work, but it was better than moving a dark color in light color. It would have compromised the rich green color that I was originally working with. After being done with darker green, I had this general shape of stem and then I moved forward adding a mid-tone and a highlight. For mid-tone, I used a cooler green color, and for highlight, I mixed white in the same cool green color and used it on my canvas. And the result for me was acceptable. There was a time period when I wanted my art to be very realistic, but as I have grown, the taste in art has also grown along with me. And these days, rather than something being very real, I focus on if it gives the illusion of the thing that I'm painting or not, or if the symbolism is correct or not, and if I distort something in this way or that, is it still recognizable or not? I mixed mauve scarlet to create a darker purple for her hair. I also add a bit of yellow so that the color doesn't stay very saturated. I use light red directly around her head, and rest of the hair I cover it with the purple I mixed. I decided to change up the hair because it was looking too much like Christmas candy than hair, and it wasn't the look I was going for. I'm glad I did change it because this looks much better and it looks much cohesive with the painting. I mixed beige color with a bit of yellow and white and used this color around her hair. I blend this color multiple times with light red and purple until I feel that it looks right. On the other side, I used a cool green color. I knew that in her hair I wanted to use green color, so for mid-tones I chose the green color. And I added some shine on her with some cool green mixed with white. This gave a very nice look to her hair, and at some point you could feel that her hair were a bit iridescent, and here you can see the colors better. I need zinc titanium white for background. I mix a bit of yellow Persian blue in white. Initially, I wanted to create the same kind of color I used previously for background, but I changed my mind and went for more like an avocado color, for which I added a lot of yellow and some brown to dull the color. And here I am testing it on the canvas and it looks perfect. It looks just the way I wanted it. The next color that I needed was a bit darker green with more blue tone. I used it around my previously done work to create a safe border as well as to give some interest in the painting. At some areas the color was too similar to the highlights I used on the leaves, so I used the purple I mixed for hair to create some differentiation. And it gave a very cool and interesting texture with brush strokes. So I decided to randomly add purple just here and there. Areas that didn't even need it purple, I still placed purple there. These two colors, purple and green, whenever I felt like there was a possibility I could place these colors, I did, and they ended up looking well together. Now I needed to cover the remaining canvas with the avocado green color that I mixed earlier. And I also added some hints of purple here and there. Initially, I was thinking a solid color for background, but as I was working on the canvas, I aimed more towards creating an interesting texture and brush strokes. I want everything to look put together, but at the same time not so much put together. Does this make any sense? It makes sense in my mind, but I don't know if it translates well or not. So do let me know. I placed dark purple color where I would paint flower. With flowers and other elements that I paint, I try to simplify things into simpler shapes and structures. If you observe lily of the valley flowers, they have a bell-like shape, and at the end of the bell, it has petals. So I use zinc titanium white to create this bell-like shape and petals, and I repeated the process for all of the flowers. I didn't focus much on adding shadows or midtones at this point. I just wanted to get a general shape of the flowers. I use a very dark green color to create the shape of water drops on leaf and define shadows on one side. On the same shadow side, I place a slight light color, and at the opposite side of that I place a strong highlight. I used dark purple to create line around one side of the flower. I thought that it would give the flower some definition since they looked very flat. I gave some pink tint to the flower using rose color, a bit of purple and some white. Also on one side of the flower I used green as shadows, and I did that for all of the flowers. And on the other side I used white mixed with beige color. As I applied this color, the flowers instantly looked as if they were glowing. Whenever I paint a large piece like this, I feel sick at the end because I would be painting for days and the painting would not be complete. Painting large pieces is a big commitment, and while I'm working with other things, this could take a lot of time. But at the same time, every large painting that I have done up till now, I cherish them so much because I truly put a lot of thought, time and effort in them. But after this piece, I would need to take a little bit of break and work on much smaller pieces. And the last step is to put my initials and date the piece. Make sure to clean the brush first with solvent and then with soap. and the painting is complete. Here are some close-up shots of complete painting. I hope that after this video the oil painting process seems much simpler to you, and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way because you would only learn from them. So goodbye until we meet again with another painting.